My name is Sylvia. I'm passionate about languages, English in particular. Welcome to my world of English. Hello, listeners of the World of English podcast. The subject that I will cover today is not very marketing-wise because I'm going to talk about something a bit negative in the sense that I will touch the issue of the failure and I will touch the issue of the difficulties when it comes to studying English. I will not focus on failure as such. I mean, why do we fail in studying languages? Because there's been a separate episode about that. But I would like to draw your attention to the question or to the answer to the question, which is what is the most difficult when it comes to studying English? And I said it is not very marketing wise because as we go, as we read different stuff, as we browse through the internet, as we watch videos, films on YouTube, as we go through Instagram, everywhere we get this information that it's very easy. It's actually easy peasy. It's a piece of cake. You shouldn't worry. Everybody can do it. There is no trouble on the way. And of course, it is true. Everybody can do it. Everybody can learn the language in the sense that they can be able to communicate in English. I have said it a few times and I will repeat it here. I will repeat that here once more. But of course, it is not the whole truth, and I wouldn't be myself if I didn't tell you that there are difficult elements when it comes to studying English. And indeed, today I would like to discuss these very elements. So let me just come back to this statement that everybody says that studying English is easy. And well, to some extent it is easy, and to some extent it is not. Before I will tell you what is actually easy, because there are indeed very, very easy elements of the language, something that you will cover with ease and something you shouldn't worry about. And before I address the issues that are difficult, and you have to be aware of them in order to make this process, the process of studying English, more successful, and in order to make it more conscious. Because if you want to be successful in this process, you have to be very conscious and you have to know what you want to achieve and how you will achieve that. So before I cover all that, I will come back for a very brief moment to the very process of studying a language in particular. And you have to be aware of the fact that it is a process, as the very name suggests, that it is a road and that you have to cover, and that there will be ups and downs. I hope that you understand the expression ups and downs. So there are ups and downs in life, in everybody's life. There are ups and downs in careers. There are ups and downs in families, in marriages. There are ups and downs in anything that we do. So what it means is that at times we will be very successful, but at times we will not. We will make mistakes and we will fail. And when we think about this process of studying the language and this road that you have to cover, you need somebody who will help you here. You need a helping hand, you need a guide, and that's why you need a teacher. A real professional teacher who will know what to do. The teacher that will give you a helping hand in times of trouble. Somebody who will see, somebody who will react to how you perform on a given day. Somebody who will know where they can push you to your limits because they know that you will do it. And also somebody who will know that there are days, there are performances when you cannot be 100% yourself and where they have to step back because you cannot do anything more. And the very process of studying anything, it is shaped in the U letter. So whatever the moment there is when we decide to study a given thing, in our respect, English, it more or less looks the same. And I said it a few episodes ago, that any moment is perfect to begin studying English. So if you have this feeling that you are at the very, very beginning, it's perfectly all right. If you have a feeling that you can communicate, but you just need to practice on your fluency, it is all right. If you have a feeling that you communicate very well, you are successful at work, you can conduct business meetings in English, but you want to perform better because you want to be super fluent and you want to make this great impression on anybody who is working with you, it is the perfect moment. So with whatever feeling you are, whatever feeling you have, you will be at this top of this U letter at the left side. But as you start studying, you will start falling because you will find out almost immediately or after some lessons that there are still many things that you need to cover. So you will fall to the bottom. And here you need this teacher who will give you the helping hand, who will tell you that this is perfectly all right, because this is how the process of studying English looks like. And then you slowly but steadily will climb up and you will get the top, but at the right end of the U letter. I said it is visible, it looks the same at every single level, because every single time you come to an English class, you come with some feeling. And very soon you will realize that this feeling is not right, that you need to work on it. And once you work on it, you will make progress. Now, I would like to answer this question, what is easy? And here I want you to listen to me very carefully, because I will repeat it. Studying English is easy to some extent, to some level. Some elements of the language are really, really easy. And I think that most of you make this mistake, that you focus your attention too much on these elements that are easy. You get this feeling that you will never cover the issues. And in fact, what you think is difficult is easy, because the difficult issues, it is a completely different thing. So now we'll talk about the easy things about studying English. I would mention, as the first point, I would mention tenses. Tenses are easy, believe me. 70-80% of people who study English, they begin their studying of the language with tenses and they finish their studying of the language with tenses. And many speakers, many learners think that they prove, they show, they represent how much of the language you know. It is not true. It is a misunderstanding. Tenses are easy. Tenses are not everything. You don't need to know all the tenses in order to communicate very well in English. You don't need to pay so much attention to it. And I am a person who speaks the language fluently. And I have no idea how many tenses there are. I mean, I know them all, but I have never counted, because this kind of knowledge is not necessary. And as I said before, in another episode or in any other recording, I said that actually, if you want to communicate very well in English, you need just a few of them. Of course, you have to be aware of all the tenses, all the structures that are there. But in order to communicate, you just need to know very well just a few of them. And when I say that tenses are easy, I would want you to refer to a podcast, World of English podcast, to an episode called Tenses in English, because in this episode, I presented to you exactly what I'm talking about right now in detail. I mean, I told you how to think about tenses, how to learn them, how to name them, what the names of the tenses mean, and how to make them systematic, how to make it easy to understand the tenses, because indeed it is not so difficult. It is not rocket science. Point number 2, when it comes to the easy elements of the language, of the English language, it is grammar, the basic grammar. Basic grammar is nothing special in English. When we think about basic grammar, we have to think about basic tenses, we have to think about basic sentence structure, we have to think about basic prepositions, and I will repeat the word once again, they are easy. As I started talking about the sentence structure, it is another point that I would like to refer to. I mean, forming basic sentences in English is super easy because it is based on the same structure. It is noun plus verb plus object. And another point, so if I'm not wrong, that would be point number 4, that when we think about English and Polish, we have to be aware of the fact that they are two completely different systems of the language. But we also have to be aware of the fact that in English, there are hardly any endings. It is so much easier than in Polish. That's why I say that forming basic sentences in English is so easy, because you just take the person that is there, like I, you, he, she, then you get the verb. And of course, there are some of you who will say, but you have to know that you say she speaks English very well. You have to remember about the S ending. But this is just one little thing. You don't get any ending when you talk about the I person, you, we, they. There is no ending. And in many languages, and let me just refer to Polish, it is a completely different thing. When we speak Polish, we have to remember about all of these endings that are there. In English, they are non-existent. That's why it is so easy. I would also say that getting to this B1 level is easy also, because the B1, if you have this B1 level of the English language, if you speak English with this B1 level, you talk about basic things around you. I mean, you talk about your family, you talk about your work, your hobbies, your everyday life, a little bit about your past, in the sense like what you did yesterday and how you spend your holidays, and about your plans in the future. And I think that this is what most of us, most of you can do. So that is not difficult. And the last element that I would like to discuss with this easy element of studying English is that most of the basic words in English you already know, because you use them in Polish, or you just know them because you read newspapers, you browse through the internet, you text other people. So the basic words about your everyday life, about your everyday routines, about work, it is something that you know very well. So now, as we know what is easy, I will talk about the things that are difficult. And yes, indeed, there are difficult elements when it comes to studying English, or if I wouldn't like to call them difficult, I would say that there are these things where you need to put your attention to, not to the things I have just mentioned. And the fallacy, the mistake there is that most learners spend so much time covering the easy elements in studying English. And when I say easy elements, I don't mean that at the beginning, of course, everything requires your attention and time. So I don't mean that it is wrong that you spend your time studying tenses, or that you spend your time studying words in English. But you need to change the way you think about studying English. So you need to think about the elements I have just mentioned as something that is easy to do, that you shouldn't spend so much time on, that you shouldn't devote your energy to, and you shouldn't worry about that. Don't worry about tenses. Don't worry about super proper accent. Don't worry about the words, because you already know them. But what you need to worry, I mean, in the sense what you need to devote your energy to, is figurative meaning of words in English. This is a big thing in the language, because in most cases, if you have a word in English, it will have this basic meaning, the literal meaning, and it'll have its figurative meaning. Figurative, it means that it will mean something else than the basic statement, than the basic understanding of the word. And very often you know the basic understanding, but you are not aware of this figurative meaning. Another important thing is idioms. Idioms, that is the collection of words that put together make a story, make a saying, and these words mean something different than we would think they mean. So it is very easy to make a mistake there. Next to idioms, I would put phrases and collocations. Phrases and collocations, they are such collection of words that go together and that are not necessarily natural for us when we compare them with Polish. In Polish, we may have different prepositions. We may have completely different words. We may use a different verb. And the example that comes to my mind right now is the expression like, you are right. So in English, we have the be verb. And in Polish, we have the have verb. The same happens when we talk about how old we are. So in Polish, we have this age, and in English, we are 25 years old. Something so simple, but something so difficult, because these mistakes are made so often, and they are made repeatedly and repeatedly by the learners, by the speakers of English. Point number 5, if I am not wrong, it is reading between the lines. The point number 5, when it comes to the things that you need to pay attention to, it is reading between the lines. So you will hear a speech, you will hear a presentation very often by a native speaker. And what they say, it is not implied in the very sentence, but it is implied in what they mean by that, but they don't say it. And that is difficult. And here, if you want to understand the context between the lines, you need to understand the cultural context. What I mean by cultural context is that language and culture are connected. You will never speak a given foreign language fluently if you don't know, if you don't understand, if you don't follow the culture of this country, because culture shapes the language. And if you want to understand the figurative meaning of words, idioms, phrases, collocations, if you want to read between the lines, you have to study at least a little bit the cultural context of a given country. When it comes to proper behavior in a language, so not just basic communication, so ordering coffee or tea, but even here, now I'm thinking about ordering beer at a pub. So they don't say beer, they say a pint. So even here, you need to know what to say at a proper time. So this knowledge of knowing what to say at a proper time is very much also connected with this cultural context. So sometimes we would react, sometimes we would say something in a given culture, in a given language, and sometimes we wouldn't. And if you would like to speak fluently, you need to be aware of this context, you need to be aware of this knowledge. Another point that I would like to mention here is something that I have already discussed, and that is understanding that English and Polish are two separate systems of languages. And every single time I run a class of English, I'm so surprised because there are so many people who are not aware of it. So copying your mother tongue is so natural, and I do understand that. So on the one hand, I'm not criticizing this because it is just natural. We would do it anytime because our mother tongue is the only language we can turn to. But if you want to make this process of studying English very conscious and very successful, you have to know that there is such a misunderstanding of the two systems of the languages. And you have to do whatever you can in order not to do it, not to copy it. My favorite examples are about listening and calling. I use them several times here. So we know that we listen to somebody in English, and in Polish there is no to, and vice versa. So in Polish, as we call somebody, there is no to. In Polish, we would put a preposition inside. And this copying of the language is natural, but we need to stop this. We need to be very conscious when producing these sentences. Last but not least, what you come to us with, what you address as an issue of trouble, is breaking the psychological barrier that is there. I mean, that you encounter as you study a foreign language. In this respect, it is English, of course. And I called it on purpose. I called that the psychological barrier because I don't think there is any real neurological barrier. I hear this expression very often that people want to break the barrier as they are studying English. And it is very common today. I mean, we address the issue. We are aware of the issue. We know that there is a trouble. But as I said before, as I have just said, I would call it a psychological barrier, not any other barrier, because any person, and I said it already in this episode of the podcast, any person can learn to communicate in a given foreign language with better or worse results. But communication means that you are not afraid to say a couple of words, that you can break this barrier, that actually there is no barrier. And the barrier, I repeat that all the time, but there is, no other way to call it. The barrier that you address is rather connected with psychology, with how you feel. And what we work on, and what is most difficult, is working on this fear that you have. And this fear actually is not real, really. Because if there is any fear, you have to ask yourself what you are afraid of. And when it comes to speaking languages, what are you really afraid of? Of course, there are people who would say that they are afraid of making a fool of themselves, or they are afraid of making a mistake, or they are afraid of saying something and some other person will not understand. But this is nothing to be afraid of. It is just natural. It is a completely normal step in the process that you have to take. And of course, as you begin in very neutral, very friendly environment. That is with a teacher who will guide you. But as you grow with the language, then you can talk to other people outside in the world. And really, I don't think that happens very often, that there is anybody who would criticize you. So you should really not be afraid of speaking a language. But on the other hand, I do understand that there is such a fear in you, that there is such a feeling. And it, for me, from the perspective of teaching English, from the perspective of a teacher, I would say that this would be one of the most difficult issues in studying English. And the last thing I want to talk about today to you, the subject I want to cover today with you, is the feeling of being disappointed. So the feeling of being disappointed and the difficulty of studying English, I think they are connected because they are negative feelings. And I think you need to be prepared for this feeling of disappointment. And I think actually there is no way you can avoid it. And I'm going to explain what that means, what kind of feeling of disappointment I'm talking about. Because I do believe, I am of this opinion, in my opinion, as you go to England in particular, I think, the British Isles, Scotland, Ireland, but I wouldn't think about America in this respect, but I would think about the British Isles. So as you go there for the first time in your life, I think you will be disappointed with the level of your English. And what I mean here is that what you study at home, in your home country, is academic English that comes from books, that comes from podcasts, from listenings, from films. It comes from your teacher that has this academic background. And this is not something you will hear in streets of London. Fortunately, unfortunately, you have to know that the language you study, the variety of the language that you study, is RP, so that is received pronunciation. It is this kind of English that the royal family speaks. And this is this kind of English that very, very, very few people in England speak. I'm not 100% sure what are the numbers, how many people use this received pronunciation variation of English, but I think it would be no more than 2-3% of all the people who speak English in England, for instance. So you cannot be surprised that as you travel to England, you will have trouble understanding what people say, because we have these multiple accents. And there was another episode on accents in the World of English podcast. There are multiple dialects that people use. Even in the very London, there are people who come from different parts of London and they don't understand each other. It's a fact. What you also have to take into consideration is that people would use slang, people would use street English, something that you don't study at schools. And of course, some of you will say, okay, so I want to study slang. I don't want to study this academic English. But if you just study slang, you will stay at this very low level of language usage, because then you will be unable to make longer speeches. You will be unable to make presentations as you are required to do so in your companies. And that's why what you have to study is academic English. So if you go to England for the first time, no matter how long you've been studying English, please, you will get disappointed, but please don't give in to this feeling, because you will have trouble understanding words, and it's okay. You will have trouble understanding full sentences and the accent, and it is okay. But please don't think that you wasted your time. You didn't. You did the right thing. You studied proper English. And just to sum up what I have just said, something I hope that will stay in your minds is the thing that I have heard a few times as I was traveling to England. And I don't think I am an exception. I think any educated, professionally experienced teacher of English would hear the same thing. And the British people would come to us and they would say that you speak English better than we do. And I think that this is the best comment, this is the best summary. I hope you will study English to this level that the British people will tell you that you speak English better than they do. And please remember that studying is a process. And yes, there will be some difficult moves, there will be some difficult steps that you would have to take. You have to be aware of them. But if you have the right teacher, if you have the right course, you will manage. But there are also those very easy, relatively easy elements of the language to study. And this is something you shouldn't worry about. You shouldn't spend too much time studying tenses, studying basic grammar, thinking about building proper sentences, basic sentences, because these elements of the language are easy. And if you cover that, you are ready to grow, you are ready to swim in the ocean with the language. And this is the very right path to follow.